Hello everyone. Welcome to our presentation for our Christian Perspectives course. The purpose of this assignment is to use an analogy to help clarify what we believe the relationship between Christianity and America to be. You know, when it comes to this relationship, many questions are asked today. Questions such as, is America a Christian nation? Or has Christianity really played a role in shaping America? And hopefully what we'll do for you is answer those questions as well as help define what the relationship between Christianity and America has been as well as what it looks like today. And the analogy that our group chose is that of the relationship between a child and its parent. So we will be equating Christianity to the parent and America to the child. And there are four main areas that we will briefly cover, and those areas are number 1, origins, 2, influence, 3, authority, and finally 4, rebellion. We hope you enjoy this presentation. Our first analogy deals with origins and reads as follows. America was partially birthed out of Christianity, like a child is birthed from its parents. But ultimately, America was to be a free nation, much like how a child, especially when it's older, is its own individual with a free will and able to make his or her own choices in life. I've heard a lot of people ask the question, is America a Christian nation? And really there are many mixed opinions about this, but in all honesty this question can't be sufficiently answered with just a yes or no answer. To answer this question fairly, we feel we need to point to 2 events in American history. The first event is the Pilgrim Voyage to America in 1620. And this is a story that most people think of when they think of the start of America. You know, the Pilgrims, the Thanksgiving dinner, etc., etc. This event is important because the Pilgrims, as well as the Puritans who came after, were coming to America ultimately to escape the religious persecution that they had been facing in their motherland of England. So America was partially birthed out of Christianity because some of the first colonists came here so that they could worship God freely. However, it should be noted that religious persecution was not the only reason people came to America from England. The Jamestown colony, which was actually the first established colony, was a business endeavor. So you can kind of look at Christianity as one of the parents and business as the other parent that kind of together started or birthed America. Okay, so that's the first event. To cover the second event, we have to fast forward to 1791, which is when the First Amendment to the Constitution was adopted. Here we are less than 2 decades after America declared its independence, and the First Amendment gives every man the right to practice whatever religion he wants. This is important, and you have to understand that America was trying to get away from the state-run religion of England and to establish a land of religious freedom. So although America was partially birthed from Christianity, it is not so much a quote-unquote Christian nation as it is a religiously free nation. Our second analogy point deals with influence. Christianity has played a large role in shaping America and her identity, much like how parents play a big role in influencing and shaping their children. Parents play a big part in shaping their children's belief system in good ways and bad ways. Many things kids are taught stick with them for the rest of their lives, and really it plays a big role in shaping them as individuals. The same goes for Christianity in America. Christianity has influenced America in many ways, but for the sake of time we're only going to be talking about 2 events in American history, and those events are the First and Second Great Awakenings. Both of these movements show that Christianity was key in shaping America at that time. And really, we still see the effects of these movements on our culture to this day. The Great Awakening is credited with helping to pave the way for the American Revolution. It encouraged people to think about religion for themselves and told them that they did not need highly educated pastors to tell them what God wanted. By doing these things, it made people have more democratic ideas and led them to be more inclined to believe in ideas that came from common people. The Great Awakening also brought religious unity to the colonies. And not only that, but it affected the colonies by changing many of the people's attitudes towards religion in general. Before this revival, religious piety and fervor had been declining in the colonies, and so the Great Awakening helped reverse this process and increase the degree to which people felt that religion was important in their lives. So the First Great Awakening really had a profound impact on the development of the American identity. The Second Great Awakening brought attention to the virtues and behavior of the expanding middle class and really legitimatized and endorsed things like strong work ethic, frugality, temperance, and things like that. Thanks to both Great Awakenings, America still knows and practices biblical morals, and many of the things that Americans hold on to as core values can be traced back to the Great Awakenings. Our third analogy point has to do with authority. Christianity has always had a role of authority in American culture, in the same way that parents have authority over their children. But the older America has gotten, the less authority Christianity seems to have on her. The same is the case with the parent over the child. The older the child gets, especially when they graduate and leave the house, the less authority the parents have over them. So what do we mean when we say that Christianity has had a role of authority in American culture? One good example would be the use of Scripture during the Civil War. The North and South both used Scripture as its authoritative source to justify their war positions. The South used verses out of context to support slavery, and the North would cite things like, "Love your neighbor." Maybe their use of Scripture wasn't always correct, but the fact that they were using it to justify their positions points to the fact that Christianity and the Bible were recognized as authoritative. Abraham Lincoln was asked if he believed that God was on the Union side, and his famous response was, "Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right." So that's one example, but let's also look at our nation's highest office, the U.S. presidency, where the majority of our presidents have sworn an oath on the Bible while taking the oath of office. This practice of taking an oath with the Bible was instituted when most people were God-fearing, and there was an understanding of the consequences of the oath they were taking, and they knew that if they lied, they were to be judged by God. Sadly, as America has gotten older, Scripture seems to have less authority in American culture. According to findings from CBN, 77% of Americans say morality is declining. 33% of those people attribute it to people not turning to the Bible, and 58% of all people say that they do not want the wisdom and advice the Bible has to offer. Our last analogy point seeks to draw the picture of what we believe the relationship between Christianity and America to be in the last century. We believe that American culture has shown patterns of a sort of rebellion against core Christian values and a turning from God in general. Our point reads as follows. America today is now in a quote-unquote rebellious teenage stage where Christian tradition is considered old-fashioned, unrelatable, and closed-minded, much like how teenagers sometimes rebel against the traditions or standards of their parents. Within the last 100 years, Americans have pushed against the unprecedented rules, regulations, and religiosity that the church has stood for, and even at times tried to infringe on society as a whole. Part of the problem may be that the church's focus has at times been on the outward actions and not so much about the heart change. And how can we expect anyone to follow a set of rules that they have no desire, reason, or power to conform to? So in many ways, America is rebelling against the religiosity of Christianity and drifting further and further away from its traditional values. Not only are traditional values being challenged, but the role of God in society is becoming more and more vague. This can be attributed to things like more reliance on government and scientific advancement. So here we have a list of major eras or events in American history that point to this trend. There's the Progressive Era, which was a time of activism where Americans were trying to bring changes to their society. World War I, where there was more trust in weapons and technology to win the war than actual dependence on God. And of course, you can't forget about the Roaring '20s, where prosperity quickly began to erode at the morals of our nation. Another example is the Great Depression, where Americans began to look to the government for solutions rather than God. Then in World War II, nationalism arose as a primary identity for the country over Christianity. And then finally, the 1950s until now, we see wealth, technology, and media effectively shift the ideologies of the American people away from Bible-based Christianity. The relationship between Christianity and America is much more complex and involved than a 10-minute presentation can cover. But hopefully, we provided you with a decent summary of at least another viewpoint to take into consideration. So in concluding, we would like to leave you with this question. What are you doing to positively impact the current relationship between Christianity and America? Thanks for watching, and God bless.